Шановні колеги, за київським часом 14 година. Згідно з постановою Кабінету міністрів України від 12 січня 2022 року номер 44 зі змінами, затвердженого нею порядку присудження ступеня доктора філософії та скасування рішення разової спеціалізованої вченої ради закладу вищої освіти наукової установи про присудження ступеня доктора філософії, наказом ректорки Західноукраїнського національного університету номер 16 від 9.01.2026 року на підставі рішення Вченої ради Західноукраїнського національного університету протокол номер 5 від 9.01.2026 року створено спеціалізовану вчену раду ДФ 58 082 103 Західноукраїнського національного університету з правом прийняття до розгляду та проведення разового захисту дисертації Чень Жунхао на здобуття ступеня доктора філософії з галузі знань 01 освіта педагогіка за спеціальністю 011 освітні педагогічні науки. Згідно з порядком присудження ступеня доктора філософії та скасування рішення разової спеціалізованої вченої ради закладу вищої освіти наукової установи про присудження ступеня доктора філософії, пункт 27, захист дисертації повинен мати характер відкритої наукової дискусії, в якій зобов'язані взяти участь здобувач, голова та усі члени разової спеціалізованої вченої ради. Під час атестації здобувача члени разової ради повинні оцінити науковий рівень його дисертації та наукових публікацій з урахуванням дотримання ним академічної доброчесності. Перевірка на доброчесність дисертації Чень Жунхао виконана із використанням програми Strike Plagiarism. Текст дисертації здобувача за результатами перевірки на наявність академічного плагіату, фабрикування чи фальсифікування не містить запозичень без належного посилання на джерело, що відповідає критерію дотримання Чень Жунхао академічної доброчесності. У разі надходження до закладу звернень інших осіб з оцінкою дисертації, разова рада озвучує їх під час публічного захисту дисертації та з урахуванням результатів їх розгляду приймає відповідне рішення. Такі звернення беруться до розгляду у разі їх надходження не пізніше, ніж за 3 робочих дні до дня захисту дисертації. Хочу повідомити, що звернень від інших осіб з оцінкою дисертації Чень Жунхао до закладу у встановлені терміни не поступало. Заклад забезпечує трансляцію захисту дисертації в режимі реального часу на офіційному веб-сайті Західноукраїнського національного університету, а також відеозапис трансляції захисту дисертації. Після прийняття разовою спеціалізованою вченою радою рішення про присудження доктора філософії, заклад протягом 3 робочих днів оприлюднює рішення разової ради про присудження ступеня доктора філософії та відеозапис трансляції захисту дисертації на офіційному веб-сайті ЗУНу з можливістю вільного перегляду. Шановні колеги, заслухайте інформацію про здобувача. Згідно із поданими документами, Чень Жунхао народився 17 вересня 1981 року, громадянин Китайської Народної Республіки. Після закінчення у 2008 році Південно-Західного університету Китайська Народна Республіка отримав кваліфікацію освітній ступінь магістр за спеціальністю складання навчального плану і дидактика. У 2020 році вступив до аспірантури Західноукраїнського національного університету за спеціальністю 011 освітні педагогічні науки. Згідно із наказом номер 151 від 1.12.2020 року був зарахований на денну форму навчання за даною спеціальністю. Успішно виконав освітньо-наукову програму та після завершення навчання отримав довідку про виконання освітньо-наукової програми номер 129 від 25.11.2025 року і висновок наукового керівника, докторки педагогічних наук, професорки кафедри освітології і педагогіки Західноукраїнського національного університету Рибухи Лілії Зіновіївни, які подані в атестаційній справі. З липня 2005 року по теперішній час викладач гуманітарного коледжу науки та технологій Чунцінського гуманітарно-технологічного університету Китайська Народна Республіка. Чень Жунхао звернувся до структурного підрозділу кафедри освітології і педагогіки Західноукраїнського національного університету із письмовою заявою щодо отримання висновку про наукову новизну, теоретичне і практичне значення результатів дисертації. Успішно пройшов публічну презентацію наукових результатів дисертації та її обговорення на фаховому засіданні кафедри освітології і педагогіки ЗУНу 23 грудня 2025 року, протокол номер 5. Результати обговорення та проведення презентації відображені у висновку про наукову новизну, теоретичне та практичне значення результатів дисертації, що підписаний головуючим на засіданні кафедри доктором педагогічних наук, професором, завідувачем кафедри освітології і педагогіки Західноукраїнського національного університету Чайкою Володимиром Мирославовичем з пропозицією щодо кандидатур складу разової спеціалізованої вченої ради із захисту дисертаційної роботи на присудження ступеня доктора філософії за спеціальністю 011 освітні педагогічні науки. Здобувач Чень Жунхао звернувся з письмовою заявою до Вченої ради ЗУНу щодо утворення разової спеціалізованої ради. За результатами розгляду заяви прийнято рішення Вченою радою, протокол номер 5 від 9 січня 2026 року, та на його підставі видано наказ номер 16 від 9 січня 2026 року про утворення разової спеціалізованої ради ДФ 58 082 103 для присудження ступеня доктора філософії у складі 5 осіб, голови разової ради, 2 рецензентів та 2 офіційних опонентів. 9 січня 2026 року оприлюднено електронну копію дисертації в форматі PDF із текстовим шаром з накладеним електронним підписом здобувача. Висновок про наукову новизну, теоретичне і практичне значення результатів дисертації. Інформацію про склад разової ради та посилання на веб-сайт, де здійснюватиметься трансляція захисту дисертації. До локального репозитарію Західноукраїнського національного університету подано електронний примірник дисертації, а друкований примірник дисертації, підписаний здобувачем, до бібліотеки закладу. Інформацію про утворення разової спеціалізованої ради подано до інформаційної системи Національного агентства із забезпечення якості вищої освіти 12 січня 2026 року. Усі документи, що представлені до разової спеціалізованої вченої ради, оформлені відповідно до вимог чинного законодавства. Електронний примірник та анотацію дисертації, облікову картку відіслано до Державної наукової установи Укрінтей, зареєстровано 23 січня 2026 року. Рецензії рецензентів та відгуки опонентів були надіслані вчасно та розміщені 16 лютого 2026 року в електронному вигляді на офіційному веб-сайті університету з накладеним електронним підписом, а також подано інформацію про дату, час, місце захисту та розміщено оголошення про захист дисертації Чень Жунхао у розділі оголошень. 16 лютого 2026 року внесено повідомлення до інформаційної системи Національного агентства із забезпечення якості вищої освіти про дату, час і місце проведення публічного захисту дисертації Чень Жунхао. Згідно з пунктами 13, 14, 17, 22 Постанови Кабінету міністрів України від 12 січня 2022 року номер 44 зі змінами про затвердження порядку присудження ступеня доктора філософії та скасування рішення разової спеціалізованої вченої ради закладу освіти наукової установи про присудження ступеня доктора філософії, до спеціалізованої вченої ради надійшли всі необхідні документи і матеріали. Шановні колеги, дозвольте відрекомендувати членів нашої разової спеціалізованої вченої ради ДФ 58 082 103. Рецензенти. Кричківська Оксана Василівна, кандидатка педагогічних наук, доцентка кафедри освітології і педагогіки Західноукраїнського національного університету Міністерства освіти і науки України. Писарчук Оксана Тарасівна, кандидатка педагогічних наук, доцентка кафедри освітології і педагогіки Західноукраїнського національного університету Міністерства освіти і науки України. Опоненти. Гуменюк Сергій Васильович, доктор педагогічних наук, професор кафедри теорії і методики олімпійського та професійного спорту Тернопільського національного педагогічного університету імені Володимира Гнатюка, Міністерства освіти і науки України. Конох Анатолій Петрович, доктор педагогічних наук, професор, завідувач кафедри теорії та методики фізичної культури і спорту Запорізького національного університету Міністерства освіти і науки України. І я, голова ради, Царик Ольга Михайлівна, докторка педагогічних наук, професорка кафедри іноземних мов та інформаційно-комунікаційних технологій Західноукраїнського національного університету Міністерства освіти і науки України. Прошу членів Ради підтвердити свою присутність підписами у реєстраційній картці. Офіційно присутні тут 4 члени Ради. Рецензентка Кричківська Оксана Василівна. Прошу. Рецензентка Писарчук Оксана Тарасівна, будь ласка. Опонент Гуменюк Сергій Васильович. Дякую. Та я, голова ради, Царик Ольга Михайлівна. Ми підтверджуємо свою присутність підписами особисто. Хочу зазначити, що офіційний опонент, професор Конох Анатолій Петрович, бере участь у засіданні разової спеціалізованої ради з використанням відеозв'язку Zoom. Ця програма забезпечує відкрите голосування відповідно до пункту 28 постанови КМУ від 12 січня 2022 року номер 44. Шановні колеги, прошу перевірити якість зв'язку опонента професора Коноха Анатолія Петровича.
Зв'язок відмінний.
Прошу дозволу офіційного опонента Коноха Анатолія Петровича підтвердити присутність на засіданні спеціалізованої вченої ради підписом голови. Чи даєте ви дозвіл?
Так.
Дякую. За реєстраційною карткою з 5 членів спеціалізованої вченої ради присутні на засіданні 5 членів ради. З них докторів наук з наукового напряму, за яким підготовлено дисертацію – 2, кандидатів наук з наукового напряму – 2. Отже, засідання вченої ради правочинне, тому є пропозиція розпочати засідання. Чи є якісь інші пропозиції? Немає. Дякую. Усі члени Ради згідні розпочати засідання. Отже, на порядку денному захист дисертації Чень Жунхао на тему «Формування управлінської компетентності майбутніх вчителів фізичної культури у закладах вищої освіти в умовах змішаного навчання», поданої на здобуття ступеня доктора філософії за спеціальністю 011 освітні педагогічні науки, галузі знань 01 освіта педагогіка. Чи є інші пропозиції щодо порядку денного? Немає, дякую. Оскільки інших пропозицій немає, пропоную проголосувати за затвердження порядку денного підняттям руки. Хто за? Проти? Немає. Утримались? Немає. Згідно із порядком присудження ступеня доктора філософії та скасування рішення разової спеціалізованої ради закладу вищої освіти наукової установи про присудження ступеня доктора філософії, засідання ради проводиться державною або за бажанням здобувача англійською мовою. Із здобувачем погоджена мова захисту англійська. Чи є заперечення, колеги? Немає. Candidate Cheng Jунхао, do you confirm that the defense will be held in English?
Yes, I do.
No? Thank you. In this case, the language of the meeting will be English. Dear colleagues, according to the agenda, the floor is given to the candidate to present the main provision of the dissertation. There is a proposal to set a time limit for the presentation up to 15 minutes. Are there any objections? No. Thank you. Please, Cheng Jунхао, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Welcome. Mhm.
Dear Chair, members of the Ad Hoc Specialist Academic Council, ladies and gentlemen, I present to your authorities on the topic Formation of Managerial Competence in Future Physical Education Teachers in Higher Education Institutions under blended learning conditions. The relevance of the chosen topic is due to the fact that professional competence acquired during higher education are extremely important for the profession of a physical education teacher. Skills related to professional management and the expansion of future management experience of particular importance. At the same time, the structure of the formation of managerial competence in bachelors of specialty 014.11 secondary education, physical education remains insufficiently defined. This is due to the social need for specialists who are able to respond to major educational changes and carry out effective managerial and practical pedagogic activities. The main of the work is to develop the theoretically substandard and experimentally verify the effectiveness of certain pedagogical conditions and the effectiveness of a structural and functional model for the formation of managerial competence in future physical education teachers in higher education institutions under blended learning conditions. The research objectives: 1. To analyze the specific features, basic conceptual provisions, and modern scientific approaches to the formation of managerial competence in future physical education teachers in higher education institutions in the context of blended learning. 2. To clarify the components, criteria, indicators, and levels of developing the managerial competence in future teachers and determine their essential pedagogic significance. 3. To identify the theoretical substandard, the pedagogical conditions, and develop an effective structural and functional model for developing the managerial competence in future physical education teachers. 4. To experimentally verify the effectiveness of the substandard pedagogic conditions and the structurally functional model for the formation of managerial competence in future physical education teachers. The object of the study is professional training in future physical education teachers in higher education institutions under blended learning conditions. The subject of the study is the pedagogic conditions and the structurally functional model for developing the managerial competence of future physical education teachers in higher education institutions under blended learning conditions. The first chapter of the dissertation reveals the conceptual and categorical apparatus of the study. Characterized current trends in the professional training of future physical education teachers based on the interaction of three substructures: the level of training, its approximation to European educational norms and standards, and the use of modern information and communication and digital technologies in the educational process, and the analytical analysis of conceptual ideas, scientific approaches, and relevant methodologic provisions, carried out in the context of developing managerial competence in students majoring in 014.11 secondary education, physical education. Particular attention is paid to the organization of students learning in a blended learning environment, combining traditional face-to-face teaching technologies with innovative electronic and distance learning technology and modern technique teaching aids. The managerial competence of future physical education teachers was considered as a stable, integral individual and personal quality, characteristic formed through continuous professional development, which ensures independent and responsible solution of professional and managerial tasks in accordance with the current regulatory and legal framework. The formation of managerial competence in bachelors was carried out on the basis of the integration of interrelated theoretical approaches: competence-based, personality-oriented, system activity-based, constructivist, interdisciplinary, individualist, program-oriented, axiologic, and ecologic, and taking into account the managerial and pedagogical functions of competence-based management of the educational process. Accordingly, we consider the formation of managerial competence in future physical education teachers as a purposeful and systematic process of developing a complex of fundamental knowledge, professional skills, practical skills, value orientation, and personal and managerial qualities in bachelor's degree students of higher education institutions. The second section identifies the important structural components of the formation of managerial competence, motivational value, cognitive, professional activity, and reflective developmental, which are manifested in specific criteria and indicators. The comprehensive formation of managerial competence according to the outline components corresponds to specific levels: high, sufficient, satisfactory, and low. For the effective formation of managerial competence in future physical education teachers, we have substantiated pedagogic conditions, which includes the creation of a motivational and value-based educational environment, focusing academic disciplines on management activities, using professionally oriented situations in the process of training and stimulating self-education activities. We have developed in accordance with scientific and pedagogic principles, scientifically, systematizing and continued professional orientation of knowledge application, consideration of individual characteristics, vulnerability, humanization of management, reflexivity and innovation. It covers strategic, conceptual methodologic, and clienteling diagnostic blocks, which integrate theoretical and practical aspects of training physical education specialists. The process of developing managerial competence in bachelor's degree students took place in 4 stages: theoretical, conceptual and technological, organizational and practical, collective and prognostic, and involved determining different levels of development of this competence. Within this third section, the effectiveness of the author's program for the formation of managerial competence in future physical education teachers under blended learning conditions is substantiated and verified through the introduction of effective pedagogical conditions and the author's structurally functional model into the educational process through an experiment covering phonological structure and interrelated stages for scientific research, theoretical research, ascertaining, formative, and summative. The effectiveness of their implementation in the educational process of students in experimental groups was verified. During the research, we developed an author's program aimed at solving specific theoretical, organizational, technological, and practical tasks, and promoting the formation of a managerial competence among students. We involved second and third year students from 3 higher education institutions. In the implementation of the program, Kamenets-Podilsky National University, Manitoba State Pedagogic University, and Uzhhorod National University. At various stages of the study, 85 students from higher education institutions participated in it. As part of the program, an optional course entitled Management Competence as an Important Component of Professional Development for Teachers was introduced at the formative stage. The tasks of the effective course were implemented in 5 stages, each of them which ensure the fulfillment of a specific goal of an experimental study in a college. Additionally, the program was implemented in lectures and practical classes in the disciplines, theory and methods of physical education and pedagogy. The dissertation makes comprehensive use of diagnostic tools that reflect the positive dynamics of the formation of managerial competence in students, of the experimental groups in which the results of the indicators of this formation, on average, showed a significant increase of 15% in the high level and 27.5% in the sufficient level, while in the control groups of students, the growth in managerial competence was now 7.9% for higher and sufficient levels. The numeric values obtained for students in the control and the experimental groups are shown on the slide. The reliability of the results obtained and the validity of the formative experiment will proven by statistic methods of data processing using features clienteling. For the country groups, features clienteling is 1.15, and for the experimental groups, it is 1.53. The later indicator is within the acceptable range, 1.9 to 1.5, and indicates the reliability of the numeric results obtained. Thus, the numeric and statistic data obtained provide the effectiveness of the implemented pedagogical conditions and the structurally functional model in the educational process of future teachers, which indicates the formation of managerial competence in students of the experimental groups. The dissertation presents a summary of the results of the study and the final conclusions. The work also contains a list of sources used and appendices that supplement the main content of the study. The report is complete. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, what questions do you have to the applicant? According to the procedure, all those present at the meeting have the right to ask questions to the applicant. Please, Professor Sergey Gumenyuk.
Thank you. Yes, I have two questions. The indications of blended learning approach into the education process for physical education students allows teachers to use both traditional and innovative educational practice in physical education. Dear Cheng Junhao, I have questions. What advantage and possible risk of introduction blended learning into the professional training on future physical education teachers would you highlight?
Okay, thank you for your question. Allow me to answer. The introduction of the blended learning into the professional training of future physical education teachers has both significant advantages and certain risks. The advantages include flexibility in the organization of the educational process, expanded access to educational resources, the development of information of communication and digital literacy in students, individualization of learning, the ability to work at one's own pace, continuity of the educational process in emergency situations, etc. Along with advantages, there are possible risks, which manifest themselves in a decrease in the quality of practical training, the inability to provide internet access, insufficient digital readiness of teachers and students, a indirect pedagogical interaction, and the study of a material on a particular subject without sufficient feedback. Therefore, blended learning is promising in the professional training of future physical education teachers. But its effectiveness depends on the harmonious coordination of both theoretical and practical training, effective methodological support, and the readiness of all participants in the educational process to implement it and realize innovations. Thank you.
One more.
And second questions. The dissertation research states the material's competence in innovative in nature justify this option and indicate to place a material competence in the structures of the future professional competence.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for your question. Allow me to answer. The integrative nature of managerial competence is justified by the fact that it combines various components of a teacher's professional activity: playing, organization, control, assessment, communication, and decision-making. In other words, managerial competence is seen as an integral characteristic of a teacher's personality, as it combines the knowledge, skills, experience, and values necessary for the effective management of the educational process and the student body. In the structure of a teacher's professional competence, managerial competence performs an integrated function, ensuring the interconnection between methodologic, communicative, psychologic, organizational, and evaluative training. At the same time, managerial competence plays an integrated role as it allows the teacher to implement educational goals in a comprehensive manner, ensure the safety and the effectiveness of learning, and support student development and professional interaction with colleagues. Thank you.
Professor Сергій Гуменюк, are you satisfied with the answer to your questions?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Next. Professor Анатолій Конох.
Yes. Yes. Dear Cheng Jунхао, I have two questions for you. Question one. In your opinion, what is the fundamental difference between the concepts of physical education and sport in terms of the professional training of future physical education teachers? Question one. I have one more question for you. How does the program you have developed shape the managerial competence of physical education teachers?
Thank you for your question. Allow me to answer. Physical culture is a broader social, cultural, and pedagogic phenomenon. It is aimed at the harmonious development of the individual, strengthening health, forming values of a health lifestyle, the developing physical and moral foundational qualities. Support has a more narrow specialist focus and is associated with competitive activities and the preparation for participation in competition. In the professional training of future physical education teacher, support is considered a component of physical culture that provides the formation of special methodological skills. Skills in organizing the training process and conducting competitions. Thus, the fundamental difference between the concept of physical culture and sport from the perspective of the professional training of future physical education teachers lies primarily in their purpose, focus, and functional knowledge. Thank you, Professor.
I'm satisfied.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Next, please. Associate Professor Оксана Кричківська.
Dear Чень Жунхао, I have two questions for you. Question number one. What dangerous situations can arise in the professional activities of physical education teacher with an insufficient level of managerial competence, and how can they be minimized at the stage of professional training?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Allow me to answer. The program we have developed for the formation of managerial competence in bachelor's degree students in physical education in experimental groups complies with all current regulatory documents regarding the educational process in higher education institutions and does not hinder its organizational implementation. The methodological training plan for the formative stage includes, according to this program, supplement the content of selected academic disciplines and having students work on individual assignments on management topics, the development of a plan. For the effective course, management competence as an important component of professional development of a teacher, and the experience of its methodologic and resource support supplement the content of the working program of this disciplines, theory and method of physical education and pedagogy, with individual tasks for the formation of management competence in students. The effective course was implemented in accordance with 5 interpretative and logic coordinated stage, proper literary, motivational activity-based, practical and final, each stage and its own goals and objectives. Thus, the author's program will reveal the essence of the formation of managerial competence step by step, from the goal and its content to the final diagnosis, to check the level of formation of this competence in future physical education teachers. Possible dangerous situations in the professional activities of a physical education teacher are related to the inability to effectively plan lessons, manage time, and the resources, which leads to disorder in the classroom or on the support field. Students may be injured due to the insufficient control during physical exercises and the disciplinary variations. The ways to minimize risks at the stage of professional training includes the development of management skills, modeling dangerous situations, and working out ways to resolve them, forming communication skills, developing and improving practical skills, employing and assessment, internships under the guidance of an experienced physical education teacher, exceptional. Thus, the low level of management competence of future physical education teacher. Critics or complex of risks and dangerous situations that affect the quality of the educational process and the safety of students. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. And I have one more question for you. In his research, the researcher comprehensively characterized the content of professional training for physical education teachers in management activities in blended learning environment. The question arises as to what management skills are developed in students during their studies at a higher education institution.
Thank you for your question. Let me think now to your answer. The content of training for future teacher for managerial and pedagogical activities generally includes organizational and managerial skills of strategic and analytic thinking, communication skills, skills for managing students in general secondary education institutions, team skills as a leader of teaching and student groups, and skills for kids on the final results of solving professional problems. Thus, the professional training of future physical education teachers develops the integrated skills necessary for the successful planning, organization, control of the educational process, and the self-monitoring of their own profession. Thank you.
Are you satisfied with the answer to your questions?
Yes,
Oksana?
I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, Associate Professor Oksana Pisarchuk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, dear Cheng Junhao, I have also two questions. So the first, how does the structure of managerial competence formation, motivational value, cognitive, professional activity, reflective development components that you propose differ from the models of training future physical education teachers already available in scientific research? Please.
Okay. Thank you. Question. Allow me to answer. I need to think. The structure we propose for developing managerial competence differs for other models for training future physical education teachers in terms of this purpose. Logic structure, the functional completeness, unlike traditional models, in our structure, managerial competence is defined as an independent, integrative result of professional training.
Thank you.
Secondly,
Yes, and the next question, yeah.
secondly,
indicate the purpose of the final stage of the experimental study. If the set goal was achieved, what results did you obtain, please?
maybe I think the structure will provide into account the specific of the physical education teachers' activities, namely managing students' activities in the classroom, ensuring safety, organizing group interaction, and then regulating physical activity. In other words, the logically constructed structure for the formation of managerial competence of future physical education teachers combines personal knowledge, activity, and reflective aspects, which distinguishes from them existing models of training future physical education teachers. And the purpose of the final stage was to compare the numeric indicators of the level of development of the components of managerial competence of future physical education teachers in the control and the experimental groups based on the numeric data obtained from the initial and the final assessment. The effectiveness of the formation of managerial competence in beginners according to the specific criteria was verified in the form of self-assessment by summarizing the indicators obtained for each of the diagnostic methods. The achievement of the goal of confirming by empirical methods and the methods of mathematical statistic features criteria. Comparative data from formative and the final stages of the experimental work conventionally demonstrated the positive dynamics of the levels of management competence formation of future physical education teachers in the experimental groups.
Okay, thank you.
Are you satisfied with the answer to your
Thank
question?
you, I'm
Yeah,
satisfied.
thank you. I also have two questions to the applicant. First question, please indicate which psychodiagnostic methods were used to assess the level of managerial competence of future physical education teachers in blended learning and for what purpose?
Thank you for your question. Allow me to answer. I need to have a think. To assess the levels of managerial competence of future physical education teacher, we use our diagnostic complex that includes the following methods. Ryan's method, motivational for success and avoidance of failure, to diagnose the motivational orientation of the individual and determine the dominance or motivational to achieve success or avoid a failure. Doctors value orientation method or not to identify students and acquire personal values and professional priorities. They assess managerial knowledge for determining the importance of managerial knowledge in the professional activities of physical education specialists to assess the level of assimilation and awareness of the importance of managerial knowledge. The most method or not adopted by us leadership effectiveness to determine the formation of leadership qualities in future physical education teacher and their ability to organize management activities. Schwartz and Yerusanomo's method or not supplemented by us self-effectiveness of self-development skill to assess the level of reflecting ability for effective development and awareness of their own professional effectiveness among bachelor's degree students. Accordingly, the comprehensive application of these methods facilitates a comprehensive diagnosis of the motivational, cognitive activity and reflective aspects of managerial competence of future physical education teachers. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. I have one more question. Your report discussed the introduction of the elective course management competence as an important component of professional development for teachers into the educational process. What does this elective course cover?
Thank you for your question. Allow me to answer. The effective program we have developed management competence as an important component of professional development for teachers, includes the goals, objectives, methods, and stage of implementation of the effective pre-pilot motivational activity-based practical and final requirements for classes, the topic of the effective course, types of educational and effective work, and the number of hours allocated for its implementation. Independent work by students, topics for presentations and essays, questions for preparation for the test, educational and methodological support for the effective course, including recommended literature, resources, and material and technical support. Thus, the content-rich and appropriately structured program of the effective course was aimed not only at developing the experimental groups, management skills, and professional abilities, but also the stimulating their self-development and self-education activities with a view to establish and develop management competence. Thank you.
Thank you. I am satisfied with the answer to my questions. Do the members of the one-time Specialized Academic Council have any other questions to the applicant? Thank you for your questions. Dear colleagues, if you have no questions, let's move on to the next part of our defense, the reviews of the reviewers. The floor is now given to the reviewer, Associate Professor of the Department of Education Studies and Pedagogy, West Ukrainian National University, candidate of Pedagogical Science, Associate Professor Oksana Krachkivska. Please.
Thank you very much. In the context of modernization and digital transformation of higher education in Ukraine, increasing attention is being paid to competence-based and practice-oriented approaches to teaching, training, as well as to implementation of blended learning technologies. Under these conditions, the issue of developing managerial competence in future physical education teachers becomes particularly important. A modern physical education teacher performs not only teaching but also organizational managerial functions, including planning, coordination, management of educational activities. Therefore, the formation of managerial competence is an important component of professional training in higher education institutions. Cheng Junghao's dissertation research corresponds to trends in development of pedagogical science aimed at improving the professional readiness of future teachers. The author substantiates that the formation of managerial competence of physical education teachers is an integral part of professional training and involves the acquisition of managerial knowledge, skills, and abilities necessary for effective pedagogical activity. The relevance of the research is also determined by the transformation of educational models caused by pandemic restrictions and the war in Ukraine. In such conditions, blended learning ensures the continuity and safety of the educational process and increases the responsibility of teachers who must be able to organize educational activities effectively and make timely managerial decisions. The analysis of scientific literature conducted by the author confirms that the issue of forming managerial competence in future physical education teachers in blended learning conditions remains insufficiently studied. Therefore, the chosen research topic is relevant and socially significant. The dissertation research was carried out within the framework of the research topic Professional Growth of an Educator in an Educational Institution, Fundamental, Theoretical, Technological, and Practice-Oriented Aspects. The reliability of the scientific provisions and conclusions of the dissertation is ensured by the use of complex theoretical, empirical, and statistical research methods, as well as a thorough analysis of domestic and foreign scientific sources. The results of the dissertation research are reflected in 13 scientific publications, including articles in professional scientific journals and conference materials, which confirms the sufficient level of scientific approbation of the obtained results. The scientific novelty of the dissertation lies in the fact that the author has for the first time theoretically substantiated pedagogical conditions for the formation of the managerial competence of future physical education teachers in blended learning environments. A structural and functional model for the formation of managerial competence has been developed, and the components, criteria, indicators, and levels of its formation have been defined. Further development was achieved in following content of professional training and the use of modern educational technologies aimed at developing managerial competence in higher education students. The practical significance of the dissertation lies in the development and implementation of author's program for the formation of managerial competence of future physical education teachers. The research results include the introduction of an elective course, management competence, as an important component of professional development of a teacher, the development of mind maps for studying the discipline pedagogy, the use of blended learning technologies, and diagnostic tools for assessing the level of managerial competence of students. The results of the research were implemented in the educational process of several higher education institutions, including Kamenets-Podilsky Ivan Ogiyenko National University, Melitopol State Pedagogical University, named after Bogdan Khmelnytsky, and Uzhhorod National University. The dissertation consists of an introduction, 3 chapters, conclusions, and a list of references and appendices. The dissertation is written in a scientific style and is characterized by clear structure, logical presentation of the material, and completeness of the research. The analysis of the dissertation confirmed compliance with the principles of academic integrity. No violations related to plagiarism or facilitation were detected. The dissertation is an independent scientific study, and its results are reflected in the author's publications. Despite the overall positive assessment of the dissertation, several aspects may require clarification. Number 1, it would be advisable to expand the scope of the experimental part in the main text of the dissertation. Number 2, expanding the experimental sample could increase the representativeness of the research results. Number 3, a deeper analysis of foreign scientific sources could further strengthen the theoretical basis of the research. It would be useful to consider the possibilities of applying the obtained results in training the future teachers of other pedagogical specialties. However, the remarks made are recommendatory in nature and do not affect the overall positive evaluation of the dissertation. The dissertation formation of managerial competence of future physical education teachers in higher education institutions under blended learning conditions is a completed scientific study that meets the requirements for doctoral dissertations. The obtained results have theoretical and practical significance and correspond to the requirements established for the dissertations for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in specialty 011 Educational Pedagogical Sciences. Therefore, Cheng Jунхао deserves to be awarded the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in specified specialty.
Thank you, Associate
Thank you.
Professor Oksana. I ask the applicant to answer to the reviewer's remark. Please.
Thank you, Professor. Dear Madam, Chairwoman, dear members of the one-time Specialist Academic Council, allow me to express my sincere gratitude to the reviewer, candidate of pedagogical sciences, Associate Professor Oksana Krejcikivska, for reviewing our dissertation research and providing an objective assessment and comments and suggestions, which we gratefully accept and will certainly take into account in our future scientific work. Regarding the third point of discussing raised by the esteemed Oksana Krejcikivska, we consider it valid agreeing with it and will take it into account in future scientific research. We partially agree with the first comment of the esteemed reviewer, as the logic of the presentation of the material in a dissertation is more coherent and understandable when the textual analysis is directly accompanied by relevant tables of figures. Placing them in the appendices may complicate the perception of the main content of the work and distracting readers' attention. However, the decision is include certain theoretical provisions or illustrative material in our appendices is determined by the logic of the research structure. Additionally, we note that a significant amount of our dissertation material is present in 8 appendices. The response to the second comment by the esteemed reviewer is as follows. In pedagogical research, a sample of 13 to 15 people is considered sufficient for a formative experiment. In our case, the sample size at the initial control stage of the formative phase of the experimental study was 78 people. In addition, our study established clear control of whether boards carried out a qualitative selection of students and used reliable methods of statistic analysis, namely facial screen turning. Regarding the first comment, we would like to give the following response. The materials of our study concern the formation of managerial competence of future physical education teachers in higher education institutions in the context of blended learning. Effective formation was ensured by the proper implementation of well-founded pedagogical conditions and a developed structurally functional model in the educational process of students. However, we note that the results of our study can be fundamental for the formation of managerial competence in teachers of other special needs, taking into account the specific of their training. Once again, we express our sincere gratitude to our reviewer, candidate of pedagogical sciences, Associate Professor Oksana Krejcikivska, for her detailed review of our research. Thank you.
Is the reviewer satisfied with the applicant's answer?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Oksana Krejcikivska, is it possible to include in the decision of the one-time Specialized Academic Council only those remarks with which the applicant agreed?
Yes,
Thank you.
it is.
Okay. Let's move to the next reviewer. The floor is given now to the reviewer, Associate Professor of the Department of Educational Studies and Pedagogy, West Ukrainian National University, candidate of Pedagogical Science, Associate Professor Oksana Pesarchuk. Please.
Thank you. Dear members of the Specialized Academical Council, dear candidate, allow me to briefly present the key provision of my review of the dissertation submitted by Cheng Jунхао, as the full text of my review has been officially published on the website of the West Ukrainian National University. The need to study the process of forming the managerial competence of future physical educational teachers in higher education institutions in the context of blended learning is due to the growing public demand for competent specialists who are able to effectively organize the educational process, make informed managerial decisions, and use information and communication technologies. So the chosen topic has a clear practical focus and reflects the real needs of general secondary education institutions for physical education specialists who are able to work effectively in the blended learning environment. So the results of the dissertation research are objective, based on a representative volume of empirical material and confirmed by the competence of its coverage, the systematic analysis and generalization of the primary data collected and processed by the author personnel. The scientific novelty of the dissertation is in the fact that methodological for introduction pedagogical conditions into the process of professional training and the author's program for the formation of managerial competence of students in higher education institution under blended learning has been created and tested. Of course, the postgraduate students has improved the content and essence of the key concepts of the research, as well as substantiated the criteria and levels of management competence formation of future physical education teachers. Though the practical significance of the research lies in the possibility of using the developed author's program, methodological materials, and structural functional model in the educational process of higher educational institutions. In particular, when teaching professional disciplines, organizing optional classes, pedagogical practice, and the system of professional development of teaching staff. Of course, during the analysis of dissertation research, no violation of academical integrity were found, in particular manifestations of academic plagiarism, self-plagiarism, fabrication, falsification, incorrect use of text drawing without appropriate reference to the source. Now I want to stop for some discussion questions of discussion during the defense. So the first, the author has convincingly substated the theoretical foundations of the studied process, while certain ensure of practical implementation of management functions during physical education classes in a blended learning environment could be pressed in more depth in the work. Second, the proposed structure-functional model for the formation of managerial competence is logical and scientifically sound, but the problem of increasing the readiness of scientific and pedagogical workers to implement it in a blended learning environment requires, in our opinion, additional attention. And the last discussion question. The dissertation provides a detailed justification of the set of pedagogical conditions for the formation of managerial competence of future physical education teachers in a blended learning environment. At the same time, a more in-depth analysis of the differentiated impact of each of the identified pedagogical conditions of the formation of individual competence of managerial competence. For example, motivational value, cognitive, activity-based, and reflective would be more convincing. This would allow for a clear understanding of the cause and effect relationships between pedagogical influences and the more specific result of the experiment. At the same time, it should be noted that the comments made are not fundamental, they are of recommendatory nature and do not significantly affect the overall positive assessment and do not negative the scientific value of Cheng Jунхао dissertation research. So the analysis provides grounds of a general conclusion that in terms of content, the set of results obtained relevance, scientific novelty, theoretical and practical significance, reliability and competence of their coverage in publication, the dissertation, formation of managerial competence of future physical education teachers in higher education institutions under blended learning conditions, submitted for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in the specialty 011 Educational Pedagogical Science in a complete, comprehensive study, a scientific problem that meets the requirements set form in the order of the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine. So considering the above, the author Cheng Jунхао deserves to be awarded the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in the specialty 011 Educational and Pedagogical Sciences in the field of knowledge 01 Educational Pedagogical. Thank you.
Thank you, Associated Professor Oksana. I ask the applicant to answer to the reviewer's remarks, please.
Thank you. We partially thank the reviewer, candidate of pedagogical sciences or social professor Oksana Pisarchuk, for her careful review of the dissertation, her objective assessment and constructive comments and suggestions, which will be taken into account in our future scientific work. Regarding the third point raised by the esteemed Oksana Pisarchuk, we note that it is wanted fully support and share the position expressed, and will take it into account in our future scientific work. We partially agree in the renewable reviewer's opinion regarding the first comment in our work. The main focus in the first and the second chapters was on the theoretical justification of the process under study and the definition of conceptual approaches to the organization. At the same time, the practical aspects of the implementation of managerial functions are presented in the work in a generalized form, given the limitations of the scope of the dissertation. At the same time, the expected results of the second pedagogical conditions implemented in the educational process will aim at precisely at the concerted mastering of management functions by students and their readiness for their practical use in future pedagogical activities, which was substantiated in the third chapter, section 3.1. We would like to respond to the second comments made by the esteemed reviewer. The issue of increasing the readiness of scientific and pedagogical works to implement or structurally functional model in a blended learning environment was not directly addressed in our research within the scope of the work. The main focus was on the theoretical justification and the practical implementation of the developed model in the training of bachelor's majoring 014.11 secondary education, physical education. The definition of its structural components, content, and implementation mechanisms. Once again, we would like to thank your reviewer, candidate of pedagogical sciences, Associate Professor Oksana Pisarchuk, for her detailed review of our research. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the reviewer satisfied with the applicant's answer? Yeah, thank you. Dear Oksana Pisarchuk, is it possible to include in the decision of the one-time specialized academic council only those remarks with which the applicant agreed? Yeah, thank you. And now the floor is given to the official opponent, head of the Department of Theory and Methods of Physical Education and Sport of Zaporizhia National University, Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor Anatoly Konoch. Please.
The work presented by Cheng Junghaо is relevant in the context of the modernization of higher education and the introduction of blended learning. It aims to the important problem of developing the managerial competence in future physical education teachers, in line with modern educational requirements. The first section of the dissertation is comprehensive in nature and distinguished by its depth of scientific analysis. The author concisely clarifies key concepts, defines the integrative nature of managerial competence, reveals the peculiarities of its formation in the context of blended learning, and argues for the importance of the information and digital component in the structure of professional training. In the second chapter, Cheng Junghao comprehensively summarizes the pedagogical conditions and develop a strategical financial model for the formation of managerial competence of future physical education teachers in the context of blended learning, demonstrating methodological consistency and systematic approach, and the practical orientation of the research. In the third chapter, the author thoroughly presented the organization and result of the pedagogical experiment, confirming the reliability of the result obtained by statistical data processing and the positive dynamics of the formation of the studied competence. The work is characterized by scientific novelty, practical significance, and academic integrity, and meets of the requirements for writing works of this type. Without distracting from the overall approach of the Cheng Junghao research, we considered it appropriate to express certain comments which we define as recommendations. 1. In substantiating the relevance of the dissertation research problem, the author highlights a number of contradictions. It would be desirable for the work to more clearly outline which of these have been eliminated in the dissertation. 2. The first chapter gives a holistic impression, but in order to increase its scientific significance, logical competence, and methodological clarity, it is worth strengthening the conceptual clarity of the conceptual apparatus. The author's definition of managerial competence is meaningful, but it would be useful to show the relationship between managerial competence and professional, pedagogical, and leadership competencies. 3. In our opinion, it would be improved to expand the analysis of scientific sources. The text outlines the author's position, but it would be desirable to conduct a more thorough comparative analysis of the approaches of Ukrainian and foreign scientists to the essence of the managerial competence of the physical education teacher, and to specify the scientific novelty of the author's interpretation and show the evolution of views on the managerial training of physical education teachers. 4. The methodology of the pedagogical experiment is described in detail. However, it is interesting to know how the author conducted mathematical and statistical calculation in other higher education institutions located at a distance. 5. We believe it would be advisable to expand on the logic of forming the experimental and control groups in the process of organizing the pedagogical experiment in section 3.1, which would add credibility to the result obtained. 6. The work presents and intense description of the problem of developing the managerial competence of future physical education teachers is blended learning in higher education institutions. It would be advisable to publish this material as a separate educational and methodological publication. The work is not free from statistics and spelling errors. Overall, Cheng Junghao's dissertation is an independent and complete work, which provides grounds for awarding Cheng Jунхао a Doctor of Philosophy degree in the field of 011 educational, pedagogical, science.
Thank you, Professor Anatoly, for your systematic approach to the analysis of the dissertation. Please, I ask the applicant to answer to the remarks of the official opponent. Please.
Thank you, Professor. We express our sincere gratitude to the official opponent, Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor Anatoly Grach, for his thorough review of our dissertation research, objective assessment, valuable comments and recommendations, which we gratefully accept and will definitely take into account in our future scientific activities. Regarding the 6th and 7th points of discussion raised by the esteemed Anatoly Grach, we consider them valid, agreeing with them or complete, and will take them into account in our future scientific research. We partially agree with the first comment made by our esteemed opponent. We would like to note that on page 23 of the dissertation, a number of contradictions are highlighted, namely 4. The first contradiction was eliminated under subsection 1.3, and during the ascertaining stage of the experiment, we resolved the second and third contradictions in section 1.2, 1.4, 3.1, and 3.3. The fourth contradiction was addressed in section 2.2 and chapter 3. However, if our esteemed opponent has made such a component, we will be more explicit in our future research and emphasize the elimination of various types of contradictions. Regarding the second comments made by our esteemed opponent, our response is as follows on page 15.3, 79, and 18.4. We compared managerial competence with professional competence, and note that professional competence includes managerial competence and serves as a system-forming part of the process, which is formed in higher education institutions during the dynamic or simulation of academic disciplines and practical training in relevant educational institutions. At the same time, we did not distinguish between pedagogical and professional competence, as we consider them synonymous in the work of teachers. With regard to the leadership competence on page 83, 96, 120, 134, etc., we indicated that our future teacher who has acquired managerial competence in a higher education institutions must simultaneously possess and demonstrate both leadership and managerial qualities in their professional activities. Therefore, in our work, we described managerial competence, which is complemented by leadership competence. We partially agree with the third comment by our esteemed opponent, as we would like to note that in the first chapter, we analyzed a large number of scientific and literary sources in order to study the legal framework for the professional training of teachers in higher education in Ukraine and abroad, and analyzed the experience of developing the managerial competence of future teachers. However, in the text of the dissertation, we did not fully clarify the evolution of various on the managerial training of physical education teachers in Ukraine and abroad, as we left this to the discretion of the author. Regarding the first comment from the official opponent, for this point is as follows. We conducted an experimental study with applicants from 3 higher education institutions located at our distance to assess their level of readiness for management activities as follows. During the ascertaining the initial control stage of the formative phase, we conducted our survey using questionnaires in Google Forms. In order to minimize the home factor, we shall assisted by responsible persons, department lecturers, who familiarized students with the methods. We had developed and provided advice on the testing procedure. At the final stage of the formative experiment, we visited the higher education institutions in person to test and survey students. Organizational support was provided by colleagues from the relevant departments whose students were involved in the experiment. Empirical data was collected using a uniform method or not at each university, after which the materials obtained will proceed using mathematic and statistic analysis methods. The beneficiaries clearly our response to the fifth argument of our esteemed opponent is as follows. In order to increase the reliability of the results of the pedagogical experiment, the condition for forming the experimental and control groups were clearly defined. Based on the principle of pluralism within the study, the participants of the experimental and the control groups will categorized by a similar level of academic achievement. studied in the same course and followed the same educational and professional program. The quantitative composition of the group was approximately the same and consisted of 38 and 14 people, respectively, which made it possible to apply Fisher's criterion. The control group studied using traditional methods, while the experimental groups implemented the author's pedagogical conditions. Thus, adhered to the principle of homogeneity of groups in terms of main research significance characteristics. Once again, we express our sincere gratitude to our opponent, Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor Anatoly Grach, for his detailed analysis of our research. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the official opponent satisfied with the applicant's answer?
Yes, I am satisfied with.
Thank you. Professor Anatoly Konoch, is it possible to include in the decision of the one-time specialized academic council only those remarks with which the applicant agreed?
Yes, I am satisfied.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. The floor is given now to the official opponent, Professor of the Department of Theory and Methods, Olympic and Professional Sports of Ternopil National Pedagogical University, named after Volodymyr Gnatyuk, Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor Serhiy Humanyuk. Please.
Thank you. Given the current challenges faced by the higher education system and the condition of learning during the COVID-19 pandemic and the martial law in Ukraine, the quality of professional training on future teachers in higher education institutions in the context of blended learning of the great importance. The new Ukrainian school needs competence, specialist, skilled organizer, and manager who can perform their professional duties at the appropriate level. Therefore, it's important for the professional training of future teachers, including physical education teachers, to acquire management skills related to professional managers and expansion of future manager experience. The relevance of the problem of development of managerial competence of future physical education teachers in higher educational institutions in the context of the blended learning, as well as the focus in the improving it, confirming in the need to study this phenomenon and the argues for the feasibility of its study. Theoretical justification and experimental verification of the effectiveness of pedagogical condition in the training of these specialists. In fact, the dissertation research by Cheng Jунхао is the end of solving this scientific problem. The dissertation in the first to theoretical methodological substantiate the pedagogical condition for the formation of managerial competence of future physical education teachers in higher education institutions in the context of blended learning and the developed practical ways implementing them within the framework of teaching education competence of professional and practical training, conducting extracurricular classes and others problem. The degree of validity of the scientific professional colleges and the recommendation formulated in the dissertation is largest ensured by the logical structure of the work. The dissertation consists of an introduction, 3 chapters, conclusion to the chapters, general conclusion, a list of sources used, and appendices. The logic and sequence of the text correspond to the solution of the research task to achieves its goal. The logical structures of the work ensures by conclusion and generalization. The scientific results and main provision, conclusions, and recommendations are sufficiently fully present in the 13 publication by the author. 11 article individual of his 6 reference the main scientific results of the dissertation. All publication is a scientific professional education of Ukraine category B. 7 are of an experimental nature and they published in collection of articles and conference material and others publication. While generally assessing the scientific and practical significance of the results obtained positively, we consider it necessary to express certain wishes and comments of a controversial nature. First, in our opinion, it would be appropriate to use the professional profile a physical education teacher in the work, followed by the analysis of the importance of managerial competence in professional activity. Second, in our opinion, the author did not pay enough attention to the analysis of the foreign experience and professional training from the perspective of comparative analysis of the formation of managerial competence of future physical education teachers in the context of European integration process in the world appropriate to the analysis such experience and the possibility of its use in the system of professional education in Ukraine as separate sections. Third, we note that the dissertation research should have paid more attention to the role and place of professional discipline in the formation of managerial competence of future physical education teacher, in particular sports and pedagogical discipline, because it is a process of studying them that future specialists develop to ability to management a group of students in physical education classes and the skilled to organize them effectively. Fourth, we believe that it would be advisable to develop methodical recommendation based on the dissertation research for teachers who train future teachers of this profile in higher education institution and practical physical education teachers in general secondary education institution. We emphasize that the comments and the suggestions made do not in any way diminish the value of the research present is scientific, theoretical, and practical significance. Based on the analysis taken into account to relevance, validity of main provision, scientific novelty, theoretical and practical significance, and reliability of the results obtained, in the reasonable to conclude that the dissertation by Cheng Junhao, Formation of Managerial Competence of Future Physical Education Teacher in Higher Educational Institution in the Condition of Blended Learning, is an independent, complete scientific result that meets the requirements of the procedure for awarding the degree of Doctor of Philosophy and repealing the decision of one-time specialized academic council of the higher education institution, scientific institution on awarding the degree of the Doctor of Philosophy approved by resolution of Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine number 44 of January 12, 2022, as amended by the resolution of Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine number 341 of March 21, 2022, number 502 of May 19, 2023, and number 507 of May 3, 2024, and the current requirement for the preparation of dissertation. The dissertation is the result of independent research, does not contain elements of plagiarism, which indicates the independence of the research and the compliance with the principle of academic integrity. In the process of reviewing the dissertation, no violation of academic integrity, academic plagiarism, self-plagiarism, falsification, fabrication were found. We believe that Cheng Junhao deserves to awarded the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in the special 011 Education and Pedagogical Science in the field of knowledge 01 Education Pedagogy.
Thank you, Professor Serhiy, for your systematic approach to the analysis of the dissertation. Please, I ask the applicant to answer to the remark of the official opponent.
Thank you, Professor. Allow me to express my sincere gratitude to the official opponent, Doctor of Pedagogy Sciences, Professor Serhiy Khmelnyk, for his thorough analysis of our dissertation research, objective assessment, and official comments and suggestions, which we gratefully accept and will definitely take into account in our future research work. Regarding the first point of discussion raised by the esteemed Serhiy Khmelnyk, we consider it to entirely valid, agreeing with it, and will take it into account in our future scientific research. Regarding the first comment of our esteemed opponent, allow us to provide the following explanations. We share our opinion of our esteemed opponent regarding the very vast benefit of using the physical education teacher's professional profile for the in-depth analysis of the structure of their professional activity. At the same time, we would like to note that the goal and objective of our research are to develop the managerial competence of future physical education teachers in higher education institutions in a blended learning environment, which determine our choice of appropriate diagnostic tools. However, elements of the professional grade will indirectly take into account when determining the content of training for the formation of managerial competence in students. But a detailed analysis of its results was beyond the scope of the study. We partially agree with the second comment by our esteemed opponent, as in our dissertation, we highlighted certain aspects of fluent experience in the process of analyzing scientific sources and using them to substantiate the conceptual provisions of the study. At the same time, we did not single out a comprehensive or penetrative analysis highlighting the possibility of adapting the relevant experience to the vocational education system of Ukraine as a separate section. As this went beyond the scope of the objective analytics of the dissertation research, we partially agree with the opinion of the esteemed reviewer regarding the second point of discussion. It is precisely in the process of master professional support and pedagogic disciplines that future specialists acquired practical skills in managing a student's group and skills in effectively organizing the educational process. At the same time, we note that within the framework of the statistics and the author's program for the step-by-step formation of managerial competence in students of the second and third courses of the experimental groups. Their different pedagogical conditions and structurally functional model were put into practice during the study of the discipline's pedagogy, theory, and methods of physical education, and in the process of attending the effective course. Management competence as an important component of professional development of a teacher. While individual professional disciplines, in particular support and pedagogy, we considered by us in a generalized context. Once again, we express our sincere gratitude to our opponent, Doctor of Pedagogy Sciences, Professor Sergei Humenyuk, for his substantive analysis of our work. Thank you, Professor.
Is the official opponent satisfied with the applicant's answer?
Yes, I'm satisfied.
Thank you. Professor Sergei Humenyuk, it is possible to include in the decision of the one-time specialized academic council only those remarks with which the applicant agreed?
Yes, I'm agree.
Thank you. In accordance with the regulation, we proceed to discuss the decision of the one-time academic council to award the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, in which only members of the specialized academic council are entitled to participate. Who would like to start the discussion process? Please raise your hand. Yeah. Professor Anatoly Konach, please.
Dear colleagues, this dissertation is devoted to the topical issue of developing the magical competence of future physical education teachers in higher education institutions. The relevance of the topic is beyond doubt, as the modern education system needs a new type of teacher, not only a subject specialist, but also an effective organizer and manager of education process. The author's definition of the concept magical competence of future physical education teachers in higher education institutions deserves attention. The definition of the structural components of managerial competence is positive. In general, the work gets a high theoretical level, is characterized by systematicity, logical presentation of material, and well-reasoned conclusions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, dear Professor Anatoly. Do you have any comments on decision of the one-time specialized academic council?
No.
No? Mhm.
No.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, Professor Sergei Humenyuk.
Dear Chair, esteemed members of the Specialized Academic Council, esteemed candidate, the scientific novelty of the dissertation research presented today lies primarily in the development of the structural and functional model of the formation for managerial competence in future physical education teachers under blended learning condition. The process model, which include strategic, conceptual, methodological, and criterion diagnostic block, is distinguished by its integrity and practical orientation. Among the indisputable achievements of Cheng Jунхао, it is worth noting thorough analysis of psychological, pedagogical, and scientific and methodological literature, which allowed the candidate for a scientific degree to clearly outline the conceptual functional of the formation of managerial competence. The author has, for the first time, subtensioned to pedagogical condition that ensure the effectiveness of the formation of the specified competence in the practical of the creation of a motivation and value-based environment. The integration of the managerial competence into the content of the discipline, the use of professionally oriented situation, and the stimulation of self-education activities. An indisputable advantage of the work is the development of the clear creation-based assessment system of determining the levels of managerial competence that creates a base of the further research in the area. Overall, the dissertation contains scientifically sound results that have elements of scientific novelty and meet requirement qualification work of this type.
Thank you, dear Professor Sergey. Do you have any comments on the decision of the one-time Specialized Academic Council? No, thank you. Please, Associate Professor Oksana Kryczkiewska.
Thank you. Dear Chair, dear members of the Specialized Academic Council, dear Cheng Junghao, this dissertation presented for the defense by Cheng Junghao on the topic formation of managerial competence in future physical education teachers in higher education institutions under blended learning conditions is currently extremely relevant. The clearer definition of criteria, indicators, levels of managerial competence is a positive aspect. The experimental part of the study deserves special attention as it allowed the applicant to conduct objective monitoring of the changes. Cheng Junghao conducted a comprehensive review of the effectiveness of the pedagogical conditions implemented in the educational process of students and proposed structural functional model of managerial competence formation. At the same time, the correct use of statistical methods, in particular Fisher's F-test, indicates the author's desire to ensure the reliability of results obtained in the research process. The data presented convincingly demonstrate the positive dynamics of the indicators obtained in the experimental groups compared to the control groups. In general, the experimental research base proposed by Cheng Junghao is sufficiently well-founded, and the conclusion to each section and general conclusions are convincing and empirically confirmed.
Thank you, dear Oksana. Do you have any comments on the decision on the one-time Specialized Academic Council?
No, I don't.
Please, Associate Professor Oksana Pisarchuk.
Yes, thank you. So I want to say about some words about student Cheng Junghao, because I know this young researcher who is very hardworking, responsible, and diligent researcher. So now I want to say about dissertation research. So they developed a structural and functional model and their authors program for their formation of management competence can be implemented in the system of professional training of future physical education teachers. Particularity significant in their emphasis on development of the ability to plan, organize, and control the educational process, which meet the modern requirements for the activities of teachers in general secondary educational institutions. The focus of the research in the development of reflective skills, self-control, and professional self-improvement, which form the basis for continuous professional growth, is important. In my opinion, the results of Cheng Junghao dissertation can be used in educational programs, methodological recommendations, and the system of professional development of teaching staff. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Oksana. Do you have any comments on the decision of the one-time Special Academic Council?
No, enough comments.
Thank you. I also would like to take part in the discussion. Dear colleagues and doctoral candidate. Оксана, ви говорили? Ще ні? Вже говорила. Dear colleagues and doctoral candidates, the research is clear, well-structured, and scientifically solid. The authors has reached the main goal and completed all tasks of the study. Cheng Jунхаo's dissertation is logically organized based on strong theory, uses appropriate research methods, and focuses on practical application. The model created to develop managerial competence in future physical educational teachers has both scientific and practical value. The results of the research are reliable and conclusions are clear, explained, and the recommendation can be used in the professional training teachers. Taking into account the importance of the topic, its originality, practical value, and careful testing of the results, I believe that this dissertation meets all the necessary requirements and the author deserves to receive the corresponding scientific degree. I don't have any objections regarding the decision of one-time Special Academic Council. Okay. And now we can finalize the discussed solution and take it into a basis. The floor is now given to the applicant of Doctor of Philosophy degree, Cheń Jунхао, for his closing speech. Please.
Thank you. Honorable Chair of the Specialist Council, esteemed members of the Specialist Academic Council, esteemed attendees, thank you. Chair of the Specialist Council, I would like to express my gratitude to the rector of the Classical University to Telobar, Professor Oksana Desaya-Diluk, the chair of the university's academic council, Professor Andrei Kolesovati, the vice rector for scientific work, Professor Mikola Devak, for the opportunity to defend my thesis at the West Ukraine National University, the director of the Educational and Scientific Center for Training and Certification of Higher Education and Scientific Personnel of the West Ukraine National University, Professor Olena Sidorovich, for her organizational and scientific methodological assistance. Allow me to express my sincere gratitude to the highly respected chair of the Specialist Academic Council, Olena Zanik, and the distinguished members of the council, Oksana Krychkivska, Oksana Pisarchuk, Sergei Humenyuk, and Anatoly Gola, for the opportunity to present my dissertation, for your consideration, for your slow analysis, questions, comments, recommendations, and suggestions. My sincere gratitude goes to my academic supervisor, Professor Lidia Lubuha, for her support, advice, and scientific and methodological assistance in writing this dissertation. I would also like to thank my family and their relatives for their support and understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Шановні члени разової спеціалізованої вченої ради, відповідно до пункту 28 постанови КМУ від 12 січня 2022 року номер 44 зі змінами та затвердженого нею порядку присудження ступеня доктора філософії та скасування рішення разової спеціалізованої вченої ради закладу вищої освіти, наукової установи про присудження ступеня доктора філософії, кожен член разової ради відкрито висловлює свою позицію за присвоєння або за відмову у присвоєнні ступеня доктора філософії. Рада приймає рішення щодо присудження ступеня доктора філософії Чень Жунхао шляхом відкритого голосування. Шановні колеги, ставлю на голосування рішення Спеціалізованої вченої ради ДФ 58082103. Прошу проголосувати. Хто за? Проти? Утримались? Немає. Рішення Спеціалізованої вченої ради прийнято одноголосно за. Шановні колеги, ставлю на голосування питання про затвердження проекту рішення Спеціалізованої вченої ради ДФ 58082103. Прошу голосувати. Хто за? Проти? Немає. Утримались? Рішення про затвердження проєкту Спеціалізованої вченої ради прийнято одноголосно за. Дякую. Рішення Спеціалізованої вченої ради прийнято одноголосно. Шановні колеги, таким чином, на підставі результатів голосування та прийнятого рішення Спеціалізована вчена рада присуджує Чень Жунхао ступінь доктора філософії зі спеціальності 011 освітні педагогічні науки, з чим і вітаємо Жунхао Ченя. Так. Чи будуть зауваження щодо ведення засідання Ради? Дякую усім, хто взяв участь у засіданні Ради. Засідання Ради оголошується закритим. Дякую.